Good afternoon. Okay, let's get that down. Pin comment. Let me get Instagram. Not Instagram, sorry. Facebook. Fired up. Hey! I hope my words and everything are on there. Okay, so good afternoon, good evening, good morning, whichever time it is, wherever you are joining me on the planet. My name is June Allen, and I'm the founder of The Art of Greatness at juneallen.net. Hello, everybody. I hope you're all doing well. So today we have got a powerful class. We've got a powerful live for you today. I'm really excited about today's live. So today we're going to be talking about how can kindness actually help you heal depression? Can kindness help you heal depression? Okay, so we're going to be I'm going to be doing the live. I'm going to be chatting to Sonia Ross. Okay, but before we do that, I'm just going to just go through some of the, what I do. If you don't know anything about me, we're going to be going through some of the stuff of what I do and how I can help you, and then a little bit more about today's live and just a little bit of housekeeping. So for those of you that don't know my work, don't know anything that I do, so I'm the founder of The Art of Greatness at juneallen.net, and I teach African-centered self-love, sisterhood and sobriety. So I came into doing this work, just to give you a bit of background of what African-centered self-love and stuff is. I came into doing this work back in 2009. I went into recovery, went into 12-step recovery because I kept finding myself in dysfunctional relationships and I couldn't get out of them. And I needed to find out what was going on because I just kept finding myself in the same sort of situation. So what I did was I went into 12-step recovery, had an amazing time, learned a lot about myself, learned a lot about the community and all of that kind of stuff. But what was missing was the cultural context. I didn't understand the language, I didn't understand the context, I didn't know how to apply what it meant to be a black woman doing this healing work. I didn't get it, didn't understand it. So I became really obsessed with reading loads of books. I've been in therapy myself for the whole time. I kind of ran. I did therapy and I did recovery concurrently, and that was actually really quite powerful. Actually doing it that way, but I was just able to really understand the context of what it meant to be a black woman doing this work. What it meant to actually do the work as a black woman living under the system of racism, what it meant to kind of explore the trauma that my ancestors went through and what had been passed down and what I'm continuing to live through now as a black woman living under the system of racism. So it was very, very powerful. And I'm actually training I'm a student psychotherapist at the moment as well. So I passed my foundation with distinction, and then I've just recently passed my level 2 and I'm currently going through my level 3 at the moment. So that is a really powerful experience for me, just being able to continue the journey of healing and then also learning about everything at a professional level so that I can continue to pass it on to you. But I'm taking you on the journey with me, as I'm learning, as I'm growing, as I'm healing, I'm passing on all of the tools and all of the information that I learned onto you and giving it a cultural context. And this is the reason why a lot of the women do choose to come and work with me, because I do have that cultural context. Well, hi Sonia, we're going to be bringing Sonia on in a minute. Really excited about that. So that's a little bit about me and what I do for those of you that don't know. Okay, so I'm just going to give you a little bit of housekeeping before we dive in to the content. So this week is Mental Health Awareness Week in the UK. In the US, it's the whole month, but in the UK, it's just this week. Okay, I don't know if you can see me. That light just feels a little bit. Anyway, I need to get a bigger ring light. So this week is Mental Health Awareness Week in the UK. So this is one of the reasons why I wanted to get Sonia on, and why I've been kind of talking about some of the things that I've been talking about. Thank you so much, Ashanti Arms, because says congratulations on the qualification progress so far. Thank you. It's really hard work, but I'm really enjoying it. This week with the theme for the UK Mental Health Awareness Week is kindness. So I've just been continuing that conversation. So today's conversation is gonna help with that. So the housekeeping is, number one, I have a simple self-love bundle, okay, which has got things about, it's got videos in there teaching you how to build a relationship with yourself. It's got 101, okay, 101 different ways, okay, of simple self-love tools. 101 simple self-love tools. So if you haven't got a lot of money, and you want something with a cultural context, maybe you don't have a lot of time, there's loads of information in there, okay. So you've got the PDF with 101 different ways to practice simple self-love. There's also another worksheet in there is how to build a black self-love list. There's affirmations for black girl bliss. There's videos how to build a relationship with yourself, how to build confidence. There's loads of stuff in there, and it's on at £10 versus £27. So if you click the link in the bio, go to heal.juneallen.net. That's heal.juneallen.net. That's heal.juneallen.net. The other piece of housekeeping I have is that I am currently building out a Sacred Sister Sanctuary, okay? Sacred Sister Sanctuary. So all of these live streams and stuff that I see that I do, some of them I take down, some of them I leave up, and they go into a vault. They go into a Sacred Sister Sanctuary vault. So I'm building out a membership, an amazing membership. It's going to be an amazing space for women to be able to come and learn, heal, just come and explore themselves, explore their femininity, all that kind of stuff. So I'm really, really excited about building that out. So the first phase is the library. So if you are interested in being part of that, and we're currently studying Bell Hooks, All About Love, okay. The next book session for this is going to be on Saturday, where it's going to be all about, what's the topic for Saturday? I've completely forgotten what it is. I think it's all about that's it. It's called The Culture of Consumption versus Connection. Consumption versus connection. So we're going to be talking about how our self-esteem is kind of externalized as materialism and capitalism and all that kind of stuff. So if you're interested in joining me for the book club, this one is going to be finished in August, and then we are going to be doing Queen Afua, Sacred Woman. So if you're interested in joining us on Saturday for this one, or if you want to join this one when Sacred Afua becomes live, then you can sign up there. So click the link in the bio, go to heal.juneallen.net. That's heal.juneallen.net. That's heal.juneallen.net. So that's it in terms of the housekeeping. So for those of you that have just joined, my name is June Allen, and I'm the founder of the Art of Greatness at juneallen.net. And I teach African-centered self-love, sisterhood, and sobriety. So today's topic, we are talking about, can kindness help to heal depression? So today's session, we are going to be talking to the wonderful Sonia Ross. Okay, so bear with me, folks. I'm going to see if I can bring Sonia onto the live stream now. There she is. Hang on. How do I do it? Oh, go live. Okay, so let's fingers crossed now. I've only ever done this once before.
Hi, June.
Oh, thank the Lord. I'm always really nervous when these things happen, because you never know with technology if it's going to work or not. And I've only ever done the Instagram live thing with somebody else once. So
okay.
So I'm really grateful. So everybody, Sonia Ross is on the show today. Now she's written a book. I'm just going to give you this one little bit of introduction, then you can introduce yourself. So she's written a book called Mastering Your Depression: A Black Woman's Guide to Emotional Wellness. So Sonia, welcome to the Art of Greatness.
Thank you so much.
And
thank you. I'm so happy to see you.
Yeah, no, it's good to finally see you. We've had a few little messages back and forth every now and then. I love what Sonia does. If anybody's not following Sonia, please go onto her page now and please follow her, because her work is so awesome. So Sonia, introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about who you are and your book.
Well, thank you so much again for having me, June. I love your work. As soon as I saw you a few months back, I totally vibe with your spirit. And it was so funny because I felt like God was telling me a message that I was going to meet someone from the UK who was a sister. So I felt like I was receiving that message, like I was going to meet somebody from the UK who was a sister. But my name is Sonia Ross. I'm a licensed clinical social worker. I'm a therapist. I specialize in healing Black women recovering from intergenerational trauma. So I'm a healer. I'm a therapist, I'm a writer, and I'm a trauma survivor myself. And so I wrote Master Your Depression, similar to what June was saying, to put our emotional and mental wellness needs in the proper social and cultural context, because that's taken out of it. And it's really, we're
Yeah.
kind of demonized for our symptoms and not really looked at as the full context of who we are under white supremacy and colonialization.
Right. Yeah, and this is the reason why I really resonate with your work, because I think there are a lot of people, not giving them any shade or anything, but there are a lot of people that are talking about wellness, but they're not talking about how racism, colonialism, intergenerational trauma, they're not really giving people
Mm-hmm.
any understanding as to what that's all about. And I think if you're
Yeah.
a black person, if you're a black woman doing the healing work, how can you not talk
Yeah.
about that? How can you not have those
Yeah.
conversations? It doesn't make
Yeah.
sense
I
to
feel
me.
like I totally 100% agree. And it was a total gap because I'd be talking to my friends and I'd be like, but why are me and my friends would be having these conversations, but it wasn't in any of the, you know, here in America, we call them continuing education units, CEUs. We have to go and get a certain series to support or maintaining our licensure. There was never any topics. They never talk about racism. They never talk about white supremacy. Maybe sometime if we'll have one off training about race, it's always a special day or a special thing. But
Diversity.
yes, for diversity and stuff like that. I'm just like, how is this even possible when everything
Yeah,
that harms our people is based in white supremacy?
yeah,
And how we've internalized it, and it's led us to abuse ourselves and each other.
yeah.
I said, how can we talk about our healing if we never talk about the root?
Right. Right, and I think one of I mean, in the UK, it's very similar to that, and I think the
Mm-hmm.
reason why they don't really have that conversation is because the training is very white middle class. It's written by
Mm-hmm.
a lot of white people that don't really
Mm-hmm.
understand it. It doesn't impact them. So for them,
No.
in many ways, it's just a box ticking exercise. They can tick the box and go, oh, we've done diversity week. We can put
Yes.
the black people, the people of color, the trans people, the gay people, whatever
Mm-hmm.
it is, what quote unquote disability or whatever they want to call it,
Yeah.
they can put
Your
whatever,
specialization.
yeah, all of those things, they can put them in one
Mm-hmm.
box, and then tick the box and say, oh, we've done it now. That's it. But you
Absolutely.
know, yeah, and it's just because we're still living under a system that is very abusive in terms of that, especially when we're talking
Yeah.
about depression. I find it interesting
Mm-hmm.
that the word depression and oppression, they
Mm-hmm.
how can you not talk about one
Absolutely.
without the other? You can't
Absolutely.
talk about one without the other.
And how can you even say that you're going to help people, especially if you work? I'm sure it's the same way in the UK, but you go down into our inner cities. Most of the people who are working with the poor parts of our communities are white people. They're
Yes.
there, serving, blah blah blah, doing their whole thing, but they don't look like them. So do they even have an understanding of who and what they're working with?
They don't.
Like these
Yeah.
people are not acting this way because they're just wild animals. They're traumatized.
Right. Right. That's my point, and that's why I love your work, because we speak the same language and we understand
Mm-hmm.
what's going on at the root, and I think that's why doing this work and speaking up about it to give people an understanding, I think, is so important, because there are a lot of people that I know, some people are afraid of it, and I've had people say that to me, or they'll say, well, it's not really about that anymore, it's about this, or whatever it is, or they might go, be comfortable with their white therapist or whatever, and that's
Yeah.
where they are at that time. But at some
Mm-hmm.
point, I think, to complete the cycle of what's going on
Yeah.
with us as black people, you have to do this work. You have
Yes.
to do this
Absolutely.
work.
Yeah. Because I don't know how you're finding it. I mean, how diverse are your psychotherapy courses? Are you like one of the few Black people in them?
I mean, you mean my psychotherapy training that I'm doing at the moment? What I love about the course that I'm doing at the moment, the psychotherapy, is that half the course, I would say half the people in my class are black people, which I absolutely
Cool.
love,
Oh,
which I
that's amazing.
absolutely love, by the way, I absolutely love it. But the thing
Yeah.
that can be quite difficult is that, because I've done quite a lot of work. I mean, I've been in therapy for 10 years. I've done a lot of my own research and all of that kind of stuff. A
Mm-hmm.
lot of them haven't got to that stage where they can have these types of conversations,
Yeah.
because obviously, where I am at the moment is it is quite diverse for what it is. But when the
Good.
tutor's black, you know, again, we've just recently had the diversity day or whatever. So I mean, the word white supremacy doesn't even come up. That's not even mentioned.
No.
And so again, it's quite limiting. It's quite limiting.
Hmm.
So let's have a look. So embrace counselling is saying the trainee Eurocentric black psychotherapy is not mentioned. It's not. It's not mentioned, and I think this is always something that needs to be taken on as an extra thing, because I also know a lot of
Hmm.
black therapists, even though I haven't still
Yeah.
fully qualified yet. I actually
Yeah.
have worked with therapists because they're missing this context of the work. They're missing this
Yeah.
context of the work. I mean, thank God we have an organisation in the UK now called the Black and Asian Therapist Network, and they're
Okay.
fantastic, absolutely fantastic. I've got, you know, I've worked with therapists, you know, as a client from
Hmm.
there, and they do a lot of work. They do a lot of work. They do like an annual conference. They always have
Beautiful.
workshops and stuff like that. So they're on it. They're on it.
Beautiful.
And
Yeah.
it was set up by a black guy and his wife, and it's run by them. You know, it's set up, so
Hmm.
they're brilliant. Yeah, someone on the live stream is saying Baton are brilliant. I absolutely love Baton. I think they're amazing. And so I
Yeah.
always send people. I'm always sending people there to go to Baton, because if you're in the UK and you want a therapist, you go to Baton. That's end of point blank period, end of subject. Because if you just go
Yeah.
to the standard therapist directory, you know,
Yeah.
number one, you may get a black therapist that's not culturally competent. Do you
Yeah.
understand?
Absolutely.
They're not culturally competent, and that's the difference. You know?
Yeah, I think that's so true, because the reason I asked the question about the diversity in your classes, because our classes are not very diverse.
I
And
know.
I think in the United States, I want to say 90% of social workers are white. And
Wow.
so even though I'm like, yeah, like, so 90% of the social workers are white, but I live in a predominantly black area. So the ones I'm seeing are all black. But if you go to larger conferences, you're totally like, one of a few. It's very uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And then when you speak to black therapists, they seem very hesitant to confront race. And they don't ever want to seem like they're not nice people or good people. They're always like,
Yeah.
oh, well, I love everyone. And I'm like, I don't even understand what that means. Like, what are you talking? I said, well, because, just from an entrepreneurial perspective, and I'm sure you know this, June, we talk about, speaking to your audience. And so my audience is black women. I say, what is your audience? They're like, oh, I like working with, I said, oh, okay, that's fine, kids, LGBTQ, fine. I said, and they'll say something. They're like, but I really like working with black women too. I said, okay, that could be a great niche. You're a black woman, blah, blah, blah. But yeah, I'm just not really sure I want to do that, because I just feel like it'll mean that, I'm not for everyone. And honestly, what I really think it means, June, what I really think it means is that they don't like, working with us is basically a step down. It's a step down. Like, and I've been in like conferences with other
Wow.
white therapists. I tell them I specialize in working with black women, and they'll say to me, was that intentional? I
Yeah.
said, yes, I chose to work with black people. I
Yeah.
chose them
Yeah.
because
Same.
it's a step down.
For
But
them,
working
it's
with
a
white
step
people,
down.
step up.
Yeah. Yeah. And also it's that thing of, if I choose to work with black people, then will the white therapist still, am I good enough? Are the white therapist still going to think that I'm
Yeah,
okay because I'm choosing to work? And don't limit yourself. I've had people say that as well. Why are you
absolutely.
limiting
Yes,
yourself? But, I think that, I mean, it's not easy work, but I think I was chosen to do this work, because I'm sure like you felt that.
yeah.
I
Hmm.
feel like I was chosen to do this work, and I that's why I'm so
Absolutely.
passionate about it, because
Absolutely.
again, I'm a survivor of abuse, different layers,
Hmm.
different relationships, but I'm
Hmm.
also a survivor of abuse as well, and I just, there's a reason why I keep getting dragged into doing this, and I don't feel like
Hmm.
dragged into it in a negative way. It's like my ancestors are like,
Yeah.
you can go over there if you want, but you're gonna have to come back here at some point, because this is
Yeah.
your mission.
Absolutely.
This is your
Absolutely.
mission. Do you know what I
Yeah.
mean? So it's just like, oh, is that your daughter, Rachel?
Yeah. It's my
Rachel.
daughter. That's my.
Oh, that is so cool that your mum. That is so good. Hang on, my Facebook is it's just crashed on me. I don't know what is going on with this thing today. I might just have to
Yeah.
leave it
People.
actually. Anyway, but
People have a hard
yeah,
time.
I do think that that people have chosen to do this work. I know it's not easy work to do, and I think it's
Mhm.
it does have its challenges, but there is, I don't
Yeah.
know about you, but there is something about I just, it just warms my heart. I just get so excited when I see Black women have their
Yeah.
insight moments, when they have their growth
Yeah, their
moments,
breakthroughs.
when they have their breakthrough
Mm-hmm.
moments, when they
Mm-hmm.
allow themselves to surrender to their emotion and just let it all come out. I love those
Yeah.
moments.
Oh, absolutely. Because I was telling someone, I was like, so much was stolen from us. Our ability to sit as women with each other and love each other and heal together. But in a roundabout way, God brought me to sit with these women every day, and being in their energy is so healing for me.
Yeah, oh
It's
my
like
God, yeah,
I never it's so healing to it's just it's not even about what's being said, it's the energetic exchange,
yeah.
because we don't have that anymore in our culture. We can go to our elders and we can sit and talk and get their wisdom and stuff. So we have to, so in therapy, because I've chosen to work with only Black women, it's moment by moment by moment, but I'm fortunate I have like 5 or 8 of those moments a day, of sit with Black women for 5 to 8 hours per day and sit in their
Mm.
space. And what that does to my spirit, it's healing.
Is so beautiful.
And it's
And
about
let's not
and it's
forget as
about
well, there are a lot of our elders as well that we
yeah.
can't do this with. A lot of the women that I work with, they can't go to their elders because their elders were quite
Yeah,
abusive, you know?
absolutely.
And so
Yes.
for us to be able to create spaces for women to be
Yes.
able to do this is just so beautiful. And I said this to my ladies last week when we did like a mindfulness like a check-in class, and I said to them, look, I
Mm-hmm.
don't think, as much as I love holding space for you ladies, I don't think you really get how nurturing it is for me as well to be able to do this, to be
Mm-hmm.
able to sit in the space and just
Mm-hmm.
hold space for them to be able to do this work. So it is really powerful, and it's what's the word I'm looking for? It's I can't remember the word I'm looking for, but when it goes back and forth, it's not just one way.
Reciprocal.
Yes,
Reciprocal.
reciprocal. That's the word I'm looking for. That's the
Mm-hmm.
word I'm looking for. So
Mm-hmm.
let's talk about depression. Let's talk about depression, because obviously this is the reason why this live stream is so important, because I know that there are show me a Black woman, depression is quite often part of our
Of course.
story, for
Of
so
course.
many different reasons. So
Yeah.
how do you define it? How do you define depression in your book?
Well, because we're so functional, depression for us doesn't look like how it's portrayed for white people, which is laying in bed, being sullen, being withdrawn, not being able to go to work. We're Black people. We don't get those privileges. We can't just
Yeah.
not go to work.
True.
Because then we, cause,
Yeah,
right?
it's true.
Because we'll be out on the street. It's not a joke, right? It's not a game. And so your whole life. So most Black people, in my opinion, are functionally depressed. So we get up, we go to work, we shake and jive. And I say this from my own experience, but I was functionally depressed for decades.
Yeah. So
I still got straight A's in school. I still mothered my daughter, but I was functionally depressed because the lights would go down at night, and all of a sudden I'm tearful. All of a
mm,
sudden, you know what I'm saying? Once all the activity of the day stopped, that
yeah.
depression would just come back and like wrap itself around me. And I'd just be like, oh, I'm tired. I've just had a long day. Mind you, June, I was saying this to myself for years.
Yeah, I so relate. And there's one part
Yes.
of the book. I love the book, by the way. I absolutely adore it.
Thank you.
There's one part of the
Thank you so
book
much.
that just like really, really got me. Just hearing you talk about tearfulness. He says,
Yeah.
um, "Why do I often feel that I am about to cry? Often, when we have unresolved emotional wounds, they can make us very tender emotionally. You may have been labeled as quote unquote sensitive or quote unquote crybaby when you were crying up, and judged very harshly for normal human responses to to heartache. These are familiar names that we are called in our community, and they do nothing to really address what's going on within us. We are crying because we don't feel calm within ourselves. Things in the environment easily stimulate us and remind us of the pain that we have not chosen to acknowledge yet." I love this bit. "The tears are a sign that then there is something within us that needs healing and is asking us to pay attention to what is happening within us." I read that and I just thought, oh my, I hear that so many times. I see it on social media. Sometimes I'll see people write things like, what was it? There was a meme that I saw a while ago saying Black women want to cry so bad, um, but we just have to get on with it, or something like that. you know, and
Mm-hmm.
I think it's just it's so common. If anybody's interested in getting a copy of Sonia's book, please click the link in her bio. She's got it on offer at the moment. What is it? Do you wanna say what the offer is and the offer for
Yes,
the
the
book?
book.
Yep.
Yes, the book is currently $16. It's on pre-sale this week, and so if you click the link in my bio, you can get it for that price. So it's
Great.
called Master Your Depression: A Black Woman's Guide to Emotional Wellness. I was trying to share the link, but look, I'll mess this whole IG stream up. So let me not click too much. I'll disconnect myself, June.
No, I will just if you click. I've seen it. If you click the link in Sonia's bio, you can get a copy of the book. It's very simple to do. So if anybody's
Yeah,
having any problems or anything, and you can't get hold of it, just send me an inbox or inbox Sonia, and I'm sure she'll be happy
yeah.
to oblige. But one of the things I loved about the book actually is if you're struggling with depression and you really don't know where to start. I love the way that
Mm-hmm.
you structured it. It's like a question and answer thing. All the questions
Mm-hmm.
that Black women have about, well, why is it our community? What does it show? What does it look like? You know, the thing that I just read out. You know, tears and tearfulness. Why do I feel like that? And the way that you kind of answer the questions are so compassionate and really gentle as well. You
Mm-hmm.
don't go too like, I can't remember the word, but there's just such a gentleness about how you've written the book, you know, and
Thank
it's an
you.
easy read
Thank
as
you.
well. There's no jargon in there. You don't drag on
Mm-hmm.
for hours talking about it, and it's not scary.
Yes.
You know, it's
Yeah,
not
and that's what
scary.
thank you. Thank you for highlighting all that because totally was my intention. I wanted to make it as accessible as possible. I didn't want it to be stigmatized. And I don't want to use all these large clinical words. I want it to be like, a conversation like we're talking right now. And
That's exactly how it was.
I wanted to question, and I wanted to actually kind of have it be like a conversation like we would be having in my office. And, kind of, I hope it came across also, sounds like you got that, but it came across as also very down to earth.
Very
I'm not
down to
trying to
earth.
be all, yeah. So I didn't want to make it, so, so high up. No, that's how you can maintain the stigma. And the reason I made it digital is because, how people in our community act, oh, you depressed? What you got to be depressed about? Just very minimizing language. So I wanted to make it digital so that they could read it on their phone, read it on their tablet,
Mm,
read it if they're in the salon, read it if they're in the barber shop,
that's a
or,
great idea.
whatever. So that, they don't have to be walking around with a big orange book that says depression.
Right.
Because
Love
people
that.
are rude.
Yeah.
People are so rude. And they're very insensitive. And a lot of people have been so wounded, we don't have sensitivity towards each other.
Yeah. And I always say when people say that, because there's this whole thing around, Black people say, "Stop being so emotional. What are you being so emotional about? Stop, don't be so emotional. You and your
Mm-hmm.
feelings." That's these
Mm-hmm.
languages. And I always
Mm-hmm.
say to people that when people behave that way, I actually believe that it came from the plantations as well. Because if we showed
Absolutely.
emotion,
Absolutely.
it could be death for
We could,
us.
and you haven't gotten to that part in the book, June, but I discuss exactly that thing right there. That
Right,
showing emotion could have gotten us killed.
right. And
And that
that's
if
and
we
that's
became
what
so
it's
shut
about.
down,
Yeah.
yes, and that we became so shut down, it basically became an ancestral response to trauma that we passed
That's
on
how
to
I
each
believe.
other.
Yeah. So now
Mm-hmm.
I believe that if somebody close to us gets emotional, it triggers
Yeah,
pain that we probably don't even know that we have. It triggers
absolutely,
something in our
100%.
DNA and so all we know to do is to try and stop the other person having expressing their feelings because we're disconnected from our
Absolutely.
own. I tell people that all the
Absolutely.
time. When they say that, it
Yes,
means that they're disconnected from their own feelings and they can't deal with that person. Can't
absolutely.
deal with that person. So they
Absolutely.
have to shut you down, you know?
Absolutely.
So this is why, again, why this work is so important. Why the fact that that we're creating spaces for Black women to be able to get in touch with their feelings without the judgment. You know,
Absolutely. Mm-hmm.
because otherwise, it's just keeping us sick. Hence the depression.
Absolutely. The depression, because as you go further in the book, June, you'll see I talk about how it affects us physically and how it affects us
Mm.
in our eating habits.
Yeah,
And I
talk
talk,
to
and a
us about
part,
that. Talk about that.
yeah, the part of us, and the part of it I talk about in the book is our relationship with food. So I had a whole toxic relationship with food. Now, aesthetically, I've always been considered slender, but when I tell you that I did some emotional eating to kind of numb my pain for decades, all I could do was eat, 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 because I
Yeah.
didn't, because I couldn't feel anything, but I could feel
Mm.
food. and I would just eat meat. So mind you, with my metabolism, I kind of stayed semi-thin. But with other people's metabolism, that can lead to obesity, diabetes, all kinds of other things, and cancer, sickness, and things like that. And I was like, once I really got into my healing process, I was like, my God, I've been eating all over town for years because I was just like, this the only I could only experience certain forms of pleasure, and food was one of
Yes.
them.
And for black people, food is everything.
It is
Food
everything, and
is
it makes you look at it
everything.
differently. Mm-hmm.
And if you think about our ancestors, food is all they had. Food is
Mm-hmm.
all they had. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that's why
Yes.
black people have their food. And
Yes.
why we've been able to make something out of nothing. Because
Mm-hmm.
even though it was the scraps, and a lot of food what our ancestors ate wasn't that healthy, but
Yeah,
because
it was
that's all
scrap.
we had,
Mm-hmm.
they put the seasoning on it or whatever.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's how black people show they love each other, and that is still very much in our culture.
It 100% is. And I talk about a part in the book about just like when babies are crying, and my mother did it to me too. Stick a bottle in her mouth. Don't pick her up and hold her and comfort her. Stick a bottle. So when I'm
Yeah,
upset, what I used to do was, oh, let me go get some ice cream.
right,
Let me go get some chicken. Let me go get some of this. Let me go get some of that. It
right.
is, and it's just those parts of us. What really, when I got in that touch with my body, June, that feeling of hunger was really anxiety.
Yeah, it's pain. Yeah, when you stop the
Yeah.
eating, when you stop the acting out, you have to, you're confronted by the anxiety, the whatever
Mhm.
it is, and I think
Yeah.
also the thing about food as well is remembering that if you think about it from, I love the whole attachment theory thing. I love that whole thing.
Mhm.
If you think about it from
Mhm.
that perspective, our first experience of connection, pleasure, belonging, that was being at your mother's breast. Okay, so when you
Mhm.
think about it from that perspective, food is the first your first experience of pleasure and love is with food.
Mhm.
So that's
Mhm.
why so many of us, I think, as black people, will tend to, go into the food addiction and all of that kind of stuff because it becomes dysfunctional because we
Yeah.
don't know how to, we don't know how to take care of ourselves. If the relationship then becomes dysfunctional or we're experiencing pain, the first thing we do is we're going to go to the food. And food
Absolutely.
is such a one of the last Bell Hooks book we did Sisters of the Yam before we did the All About Love, and she writes a whole chapter in there about how black women can hide food addiction because food is such a massive part of our culture. So a lot of black
Mhm.
women suffer from bulimia, anorexia. You know, we act out around food because it's very
Mhm.
hidden. It's very hidden in our culture, and so a lot of us as black women can be in a lot of pain, and we use food and we don't, because we don't understand it, because we're not having these
Mm-mm.
conversations around why, and understanding it as well from this context.
Yes.
People
Mhm.
will continue to act out the food because they don't understand what's underneath. They just think, oh well, I like chips or I like whatever it is, and it's not that. It's
Yeah.
because the
Yeah.
underlying anxiety is I don't feel safe in my black body. I'm not
Absolutely.
good at relationships because my mum has internalized trauma and
Mhm.
internalized racism. Maybe it's ancestral, maybe it's current, whatever it is.
Yeah. Mhm.
So I think,
Yep.
yeah, it's so important to have
It
these
is so important.
conversations.
Yeah, it is so important. And in the book, I kind of delineate between anorexia and bulimia. I said there's a whole swath of eating disorders that we have as Black people that are not those two, because those two are extreme. And even though they're very marginalized in our community and they're not given the proper voice they should, there's a
Mm,
whole thing. Because I didn't have anorexia, I didn't have bulimia, but my emotional eating was out of control. Now I wasn't even binge eating, but when I wake up, I thought about food when I went, and that gave me, that was always a highlight of what to look forward to my
mm.
day. Because when we're so shut down and we're not connected with our experiences, what we use for joy is externalized.
Yeah,
So it's either food,
100%.
it's food, it's sex, it's drugs, it's shopping, it's relationships, it's whatever.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes so much sense. And I've talked very openly about my own addictions and, around relationships and stuff. So I really relate to a lot of that. And I've used food as well in many ways. And I'm not, I don't go to food meetings and I'm not, like you said, I'm not at the end of any of those spectrums, but I do
Mm-hmm.
sometimes have a dysfunctional relationship with food because of
Oh,
pain. I can undereat.
absolutely.
I can undereat. I don't go to the extreme of, starving myself for days on end.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
like you said, there are different, it's cunning. There are different ways that it plays itself out, and it's
Yes.
just being
Yes.
aware of the relationship, just being aware of the relationship, and just kind of talking about again back to the depression conversation as well. I think it's important to really, one of the things that I think one of the reasons why a lot of us act out in addictive ways or compulsive ways as well is because I'm a firm believer that for me anyway, I speak for myself, for me depression was anger without the fire.
Mm-hmm.
For me, depression was anger without the fire. It's an accumulation of not being heard, not being able to speak up, when I'm
Mm-hmm.
feeling rage, not being
Mm-hmm.
seen, being abandoned. It's all of
Mm-hmm.
those really difficult conversations
Mm-hmm.
that I didn't understand. And so a lot of that was accumulation of rage, and a lot of people talk about the angry black woman and all of that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
underneath a lot of that was pain. It was pain,
Absolutely.
and
Yeah.
the depression was just my attempt to try and just put a lid on it.
Absolutely. That's a great way to put it. And that's what it is. It's like basically trying to put a lid on everything that we're not allowed to express, because it's so reinforced in our families that you have no reason to be crying. You have no reason to be upset. And so as children, we internalize this and we're just like, shut up, shut down, and let's just get through it. But then we're causing ourselves, so much harm and pain.
Yeah.
And, for me, my depression was internalized. And
Mm,
so I just was just very like, I was numb for years. I didn't feel
mm,
anything. And I talk about that in the book, just like numb. Like if you would say, Sonia, how do you feel about that? I don't feel
yeah,
anything.
no, yeah.
I don't feel, and I would sit there and I'd be like, no, I don't know, I don't feel anything. And people were just like, why don't you ever seem happy? I'm like, well, I just, because it wasn't really computed, because I had to shut down for emotional survival at
Yeah.
a very young age. And so it was like rebooting a system. And it
Mm,
came back online, thank God, but it took a long time. And so, it looks many different ways. A lot of, like, when they say, why are our people so angry? Well, that's why. A lot of them are depressed. And anger causes irritation, and
yes.
your nerves are, and for those of us, especially, we suffer, the comorbidities. I don't like that word, but we, as Black people, we suffer concurrently with several things. We have individual trauma, we have collective trauma, and we have historical trauma.
Oh my God.
And
Hallelujah. Yes. Thank
yes,
you for,
and it's all
yeah.
living in our body as one experience.
Yeah.
And so we're so easily triggered, and we get so agitated with each other over small things. That's why we can be so brutal towards each other.
Oh my God. I so 100% agree with what I'm saying. And I say this to people all the time, and particularly people like Black people in the helping professions as well, because I think that this is something that's missing. They don't understand. Well, why is it that Black people are so rude to each other, especially Black customers? When we're talking about entrepreneurship and stuff like that. And I said, you've got to
Mm-hmm.
understand, if you're working with Black people in particular, okay, if a Black person is your customer, you have got to work with that customer in a different way, because 9 times out of 10, I mean, most of the people that I work with, okay, most of the people that I work with, they have experienced pain and trauma from people that look like them.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so it's going to be, you've got to bear that in mind if people are going to work with you. If people are going
Yeah.
to work with you, especially
Yeah.
around things like therapy and stuff like that, you have to, they've
Yeah.
got to trust you. They
Absolutely.
have to trust you in a different way. I could not, when I first started doing this work, I couldn't see a Black therapist. Real talk.
Yeah. Yeah.
I could not see a Black therapist because I was
Yeah.
so traumatized by all of the stuff that happened in my family. I didn't
Yeah.
even know I was traumatized. I just knew that
Yeah.
I couldn't be vulnerable with another Black person. It took me years.
But yeah, but also we're conditioned that white people are safer for us,
Right.
even though that is not
It's
true.
not true.
Even though that it's not true, but we're conditioned, and so we have to come out of that thinking. So I had to come out of that as well. I've been in therapy for years myself. My current therapist is white because we're doing a special modality, but I was with my Black therapist for about 3 years, and I've had a couple Black therapists. And when you're not raised in a situation where people who look like you are kind to you, your system is not going to feel safe.
System is going to go.
Yes, danger. Like something is
Exactly.
going on.
Exactly.
Something is going on. So we have to like understand, and that's why clinicians who are Black need to go into their own healing process, because how are you going to work with people, especially Black people, and
Right.
you are still kind of in that traumatized mindset with them? Oh, you think just because you have a degree and you have some licenses and you've taken some other things, you're like trying to bypass your pain, but you can't do that.
Right. It
Yeah.
just can't work. It just can't work like that. I was
Mm-mm.
absolutely about, I would say about maybe 6 months ago, I was absolutely distraught. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I was in a Facebook group. I won't name the Facebook group.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but there was a lot of therapists in there. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Black therapists.
Mm-hmm.
And somebody put up a post about hitting children, and the conversation was, they started talking about, that it was okay to hit children,
Yeah.
and it was,
Yeah.
and that some of them don't experience trauma. And I looked at that thread and I just thought, this is what
Wow.
happens when people do their training from the neck up,
Absolutely.
and
100%.
they don't do their own work.
Absolutely.
They're doing it from the neck
Absolutely.
up. How can you have therapists that are doing this work that thinks it's still okay to beat children? You haven't done your trauma work.
Absolutely.
Period.
100%. And that's always really shocking to me. And I tell Black people, and I'm like, look, I'm not going to argue with you about it. I said, we are heavily traumatized. We should not be putting our hands on our children. I don't care how in your feelings you get about it.
Yeah.
As much abuse as we have suffered, we should not be hitting each other.
Yeah.
And then people want to be like, oh, that's white parents. And I was like, if you look, stop it. I said, the most abusive people on the planet, but they're better than us. No, thank you. No, ma'am. No, sir. No, don't hit your children. We've been badly abused. We need to treat them with gentleness and love and kindness. And if you cannot find that within yourself, there's resources to help you reconnect to your body, and you don't have to manhandle your children.
Yeah. And again, it's a trauma response. It gets passed down.
Absolutely.
I don't say those things to shame parents that have done that.
No,
I say those things to help them understand what's at the root of it, and that there is a way out of it. And that if you want the next generation to show up in the world in a different way, if you want to raise the next generation of children that are empowered, that feel confident, then we have to stop doing this. And our community, I won't argue with people that do this either. I just can't. It's too triggering for me, and I just won't engage. I can't engage. But I think it is important to keep having these conversations, because I think, again, this adds to the depression. I think a lot of our children get depressed really young because this is happening in the home. I mean, especially in this current climate with this lockdown. I mean, God knows what so many of our children are going through around this.
We need to speak open, and that's why I appreciate you, June, and thank you for having me on. We need to speak openly. This is why I tell people that I'm a child abuse survivor. This is why I tell people I'm a sexual assault survivor. Because we need to know that these experiences are damaging. And I tell people I was probably depressed since I was like 8 or 10.
Yeah, same. Same.
Yeah, if you're growing up, and children can be very, very depressed. I had a lot of stomach issues, a lot of headaches and things like that, because that's how it manifests in a child's body. And so we cannot just because you're like only operating from the neck up because that feels safe for you, which I get, don't minimize your child's experiences.
Yeah. But this is why it's so important for us to do the work. Why,
absolutely,
there's no point in trying to empower your child if you're not doing the work. Parenting is not trying to change the child. You have to do the work yourself. That's how you're a good parent.
Absolutely.
The only way I was able to break those generational curses, if my child is acting up in a certain way that I'm finding really triggering, I need to go to a recovery meeting. I need to go and pick up a book. I need to go and talk to my therapist. Not so that I can deal with her in a sober way, because I have not been taught how to have these conversations how to have this build that relationship in an empowering way. And I was always really afraid. This is one of the things that really kept me doing this work and kept me in recovery, is because I was so afraid that I was going to pass that stuff on to my child.
Sure. I felt the same way, June. I was gripped with such a terror that I would be like the person who raised me. And, because I understand the damage it did to my soul and my spirit. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? So I was just like horrified. But, I would just pray. And every time I prayed, God would give me the tools I needed, either through a word or a book or a conversation or a class, or my intuition to guide me to a resource to help me so that I would not enact any harm on her.
Yeah.
And everybody's like, oh, she's so kind, she's so sweet, y'all seem so
Mm,
connected. I said, because I haven't been manhandling her
yeah,
and shutting her down so that she doesn't want to approach me.
yeah. Oh, I just got goosebumps when you were saying that because I just want you to just get present to this moment that what we're talking about, we're breaking some generational ish right here.
Yes,
We're
yes,
breaking
yes.
some generational ish right here. And we're talking about
Hmm.
generations and generations and generations from the plantations.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yes.
And I say this as well to a lot of the ladies in my group. The reason why some of this work for us feels so painful is because we're the first generation of children that are doing this work. We're the
Mm-hmm.
first generation of children that are choosing to become therapists, not just therapists as it relates to, you know, the white study, but choosing to do
Yeah,
the extra work required so that we can serve our people,
absolutely. Absolutely.
you
100%.
know?
And to sit with ourselves and look at our own pain and be like, my God, once you have empathy for yourself, you don't want to enact that same pain on your child.
Oh my God. Yeah.
You
Yeah.
don't want to do that to them. I mean,
Yeah.
before I got into I was never into spanking, but early something was going on with my daughter, and I think I spanked her like 3 times. Look, June, I will regret that. I will always
Mm,
regret that. I don't even know if she remembers it, but I immediately felt bad and guilty because I knew that's what I shouldn't have done. But I felt the resources I had within me at my time,
yeah.
I felt like I had tapped them out and I didn't know what else to do. But I would never, if I had, I would never hit her. I haven't spanked my daughter since she was like 6.
Mm, yeah.
And it only happened like, and I hadn't spanked her before. It was just like she was having a rough school year and I was just over it. But I think she was
Mm,
like in the second grade. And that was it. It's like 2 or 3 times that year or something like that. But or maybe it's twice. And I knew that I had done the wrong thing.
mm.
I knew I
But it's
had done the
so
wrong thing.
great that you're like somebody's putting a note in the thing saying about conscious parenting, and that's what conscious parenting is. It's recognizing in that moment that it just doesn't work. You know,
No.
it was a few years ago. I wrote when I did my foundation, I had to write. I wrote a piece about abuse and stuff like that. Around it was about attachment. It was about attachment and understanding how I became disconnected from myself and became disconnected from my family. And I remember when I
Mm-hmm.
wrote the piece, and I thought, I just want to know what it feels like to, what would it feel like to actually to reenact that? What it must feel like for a parent to actually hit a child. I've never hit my daughter. I've never done it. But what I did
Mm-hmm.
was I had a doll. I had a doll, and I remember putting the doll on the bed. Okay, and I actually
Mm-hmm.
took out a leather strap
Mm-hmm.
and I wrapped it around my head just so I could feel what it felt like,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know. And I couldn't do it. I couldn't
Absolutely.
do it, and
Yeah.
I thought to myself, for somebody, and a lot of these parents, mind you, would actually go and tell the child to go and get it, to go and get the
I
go and get the
know.
strap,
I know.
go and get tell a child to go and get the strap, and to hold
Yeah.
the strap
Well,
in your hand.
absolutely.
That you have to be disconnected from yourself to do that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And then it was some nauseating period. It was a couple years ago. I don't consume a lot of, sorry, I don't make the camera wobbly. It was a nauseating period. And there was some videos circulating. It was like a thing for a while where people were posting themselves beating their children and they were
Yeah,
posting it
I've
online.
seen,
I was like,
yeah.
that's so sick. That's so sick.
Black
Don't do that. What
people,
do you,
okay. So
please
from Sonia
stop.
and myself,
Please stop.
number one, please can you stop sharing those videos? Okay. Please can you
Yeah.
stop sharing those videos because number one, you're traumatizing the community when you continue to do
Mm-hmm.
that. What's appropriate is for you to report the video so that
Mm-hmm.
so that hopefully if enough of us report it, they will take it down and the police will
Mm-hmm.
do whatever investigations that needs to be done. But continuing to share those things, it just continues to trauma. I can't, man. I had to turn off the thing in my phone that automatically plays the
I
video
did too.
because
I did. I turned it off.
I just I literally
I
I
did
just
too.
can't.
No, you're not going to surprise me by seeing my people get abused. No,
No,
thank you. No. Mm-mm.
Marie's saying it's slave master mentality. It's slave master
Mm.
mentality. It is, and we don't even know
It,
it. I call that behavior. It's white supremacy on autopilot.
it
You
is white
know, I
supremacy
call
and
that white supremacy
autopilot.
on autopilot.
And we've been treated in such a sadistic way that we're sadistic to our children.
Hundred
Because this
percent.
was
That's
this
where it
one.
comes from.
Yes, it's sadism because they were into sadism because they would just torture us because it was a fun day to do so. It
Yeah,
was just they would just torture us. And so when I see these
yeah,
videos and stuff like that, I'm like, don't do that. Number one, it just breaks my heart. I can't even be
yeah,
in any space if somebody is speaking roughly to a child. I'm not talking about
yeah,
telling them to stop. Like I told my daughter to stop, but I've never cursed at my daughter. I hardly
yeah.
ever raise my voice. I don't raise my voice at her.
Mm.
And so, it's a whole thing. But among Black people, the way we parent is irregular.
Yeah. And again, it's trauma. That's not an excuse, but it just goes to show the amount of pain that a lot of us are in, the amount of work
Mm-hmm.
that still needs to be done. And this is why this
Absolutely.
whole idea around kindness is such an important part of our healing, because I think it gets
Mm-hmm.
minimized. And I think as Black
Absolutely.
people, being able to show, first of all, showing compassion to self is how we begin to
Mm-hmm.
show compassion for others. And I think the whole concept of kindness was really important. For I really wanted to for us to talk about that today, because I think, as therapists, and with the work that we're doing, we can sometimes get stuck in the pain and get stuck in the trauma of it. And it's important for
Mm-hmm.
us to talk about solutions, and really really simple ways that we can begin to do that. And I think that so
Yeah.
many of us do suffer with depression. That's a given. We do suffer with depression.
Yeah.
But I think it's
Absolutely.
really important as well to think about the really simple ways that we can start to being kind to ourselves, and so that we can begin to be kind to each other. So just, I know that you've
Mm-hmm.
had quite a traumatic, your story's quite traumatic. Can you share with us some acts of kindness that happened to you, maybe in the beginning? What was your first experience of kindness, maybe in therapy, or can you remember?
Yeah. For me, I really began experiencing kindness. Definitely like only a few years ago, June. So I'm not even gonna lie and say it's been like so long. It was a few years ago.
Mm,
And what happened was that, once this feeling of numbness kind of, was able to be like reprocessed and it kind of dissipated, it made space for me to feel my other feelings.
yeah.
And I had so much compassion for myself. I was like,
Mm,
you've been through so much. Why wouldn't you feel this way? And
yeah,
that was the opening. When I
yeah.
could see my feelings and emotions and I can be like, oh my gosh, I understand why you're hurting like that. Because that was very traumatic.
Mm,
Feeling rejected, abandoned, alone, and unloved as a child, that's devastating.
yeah. It's very
But what I was able to sit, yeah, and I was able to sit with myself and, reparent those parts, speak to them and say, I love you. I'm here for you.
mm,
You know, what that person did to you was wrong. You did not deserve that.
yeah.
And give those parts of myself the love and nurturance that I needed at that age.
Mm,
My system became much more regulated. Um, I'm able to manage my mood so much better. I don't really have depressive episodes anymore, thank God. So I consider myself 80% recovered, and I know I'm very fortunate to say that.
mm.
Um, but just being gentle with myself, and I didn't even know we were going to do this today, June. But the posts I've had this week have been about kindness,
Oh,
about
interesting. Wow.
yeah, it's been about kindness. It's been about when our parts come up for ourselves, greeting them with awareness
Yeah.
and not shaming them anymore, and forcing them back, because a lot of the relationship we have with ourselves internally is the relationship that the slave master had with the slave, and the relationship that our parents had with us. And
Mm,
so I'm calling for my people to come out of that conflictual relationship with ourselves
yeah.
and be open to recognizing and accepting all parts of us, because all parts of us need healing in order for us to be transformed.
Yeah. And I love that you addressed that in the book. Actually, Sonia has a. For those of you that have just joined, we have Sonia Ross, the amazing Sonia Ross. She's written an amazing book called "Master Your Depression: The Black Woman's Guide to Emotional Wellness." So you can click the link in her bio. She's got an offer on at the moment to buy the book at 20% off. It's $16 at the moment for those of you that have just joined. So we're talking about kindness, and we're talking about how kindness can heal depression. So it is important to really think about the relationship that we have with our bodies, because I think the reason why so many of us have survived is because we've numbed ourselves, like you were saying earlier. We've cut ourselves
Hmm.
off from the neck down
Yeah,
in order to survive. So we're not really connected to our bodies,
not at
and
all.
I loved
Not at
what
all.
you said, where was it now? I actually wrote it down. Where is it? one of the questions that you asked was, what is the relationship with my body beyond sex? And I was like, wow, wow, because like my mind was just like blown. To know, my mind was blown because I was just like, for so many of us, that's the
Yeah.
only connection. And apart from that and food, sex and food,
Yeah.
that's it.
Yes. Yeah. Yep.
That's it.
Totally. Totally.
We don't know how to be in our bodies. We don't know how to
Yeah.
be in our bodies, you know?
Absolutely.
And
Yeah.
I just thought that was just so powerful because so many of us, even like with everything that's going on now, there's still this thing around, well, my black body triggers people to be abusive. My black body triggers
Yeah.
white supremacy to treat me some sort of type of way. And so the healing
Absolutely.
process, such an important part of this healing process is building a relationship with our black body, finding a safe space so you can talk about your black body. You know,
Yes.
talk us a little bit more.
Absolutely.
I mean, I'm talking about that. I mean, I was blown blown away by that bit of the book. But if you could talk about that bit, that would be great.
Yeah, no, I mean, I appreciate what you shared there. Yeah, we don't like I always say that as Black people, and this definitely applies to Black men, but definitely Black people in general, we're only allowed to feel certain things: hunger and sexual arousal, and sometimes anger, depending on what the
Yeah,
season is. I
with
said,
each
but
other, but
no,
not with white people. We're allowed to
no,
feel angry with each other,
100%.
but not with white people.
100%. Yeah, we can beat the crap out of each other under all circumstances, but we
Yeah,
just can't touch white supremacy. So, when it comes to sex, can you feel pleasure in your body without sexual contact? Do you can you tolerate touch that is not sexual? As a trauma survivor, I don't know how it was for you, June, but as a trauma survivor, when I first had my baby, she's a big girl now, but when I first had her, the constant touching from children, I didn't realize that was triggering for me
yeah.
because I hadn't been touched as a child. I
Mm,
hadn't been touched, I hadn't been held, I hadn't been kissed, I hadn't been comforted. So to constantly have someone touching me
painful.
was
Yeah,
it was overstimulating.
yeah,
But I was able to just like tough it out and get through it. But I had been trained. Oh, the first time I felt true pleasure was the first sex,
yeah,
and that's it for most of us.
yeah.
When we first time we feel we can be relaxed and we can have someone who
Mm,
wants to be with us
yeah,
is through sex.
yeah. That
And
makes so much sense, and I think that's why as well. Why so many of I mean, for me personally, I know I struggled with meditation for that reason because I
mm-hmm,
just could not allow myself to drop into my body because what
absolutely.
came up was the grief, the rage, the
Mm-hmm.
I just couldn't. It didn't feel safe and I have to. I can't even speak, but
It's okay. I
you
get you.
understand what I meant. You
I,
understand what I
I
mean?
do understand.
Yeah,
I do understand. I would get agitated. My mind would just start going. My mind would just start going, 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 going. And then I couldn't meditate for years. But then once I went into my own healing process and I learned how to calm myself down,
yeah.
then I knew that a part of my brain was meditating, but then a part of my brain was chattering and that was okay. But I wasn't completely overwhelmed by it.
Mm,
Because when you don't have that connection with your body doesn't even feel safe.
yeah,
You only
exactly.
all you've experienced is violence. You've never experienced someone actually loving you without needing something reciprocal in return.
Yeah, yeah. I just have to let you know, I can't believe we've been talking for nearly an hour. Instagram is going to cut us off in 2 minutes. So if
Okay.
you're okay, if you have the time,
Sure.
I'll
Come
start the
back.
live again and we'll maybe just,
Yeah.
we can talk about some other things. I know this is so fascinating, this conversation.
Yes. Sure.
So
Yes.
if it cuts out, I'll just restart it again and then we can, we can continue the conversation. But
Yes.
yeah, I think it just makes so much sense. And I think that to be able to have this honest conversation and for people to be able to understand why things feel so uncomfortable in their bodies, I think is just so powerful for women to really get that. Marie's
Mm-hmm.
saying even sex cannot even be satisfying or fulfilled, right? Because you have to you have to be present inside your body in order to experience pleasure through sex. You have to be present in your
Yes.
body, and
Yes.
if you're not present in your body, then you can't experience sex. And that's again, these are another conversations why relationships are difficult for us, difficult for us
Absolutely.
as Black women. But
Absolutely.
there's not enough safe places for us to have these conversations because we're not talking about it within the context. We're not
Yes.
talking about it within the context of internalized racism within self, internalized
Mm-hmm.
racism within the family of origin, and
Mm-hmm.
what you know, the system tells us about our bodies within the
Yeah,
social context, you know.
absolutely. 100%.
And that is all going to have an impact on how we feel about ourselves, how comfortable we feel to experience pleasure, to express pleasure, and
Mm-hmm.
to be able to be in a relationship where we feel